We've got an update on The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. It comes from director Charlotte Brändström, who claims that they will be making the show darker in tone so it will be more authentic. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. This is over at thatparkplace.com. Wrote this up on Valentine's Day. Let's dig into this here. She was doing an interview with the Swedish website Moviesime, where she said, "What I know and what I can say for a fact is that it's going to be darker and it's going to be edgier and more character driven. I still think we have some very interesting episodes coming up. I watched all of them over Christmas, just the cuts. I think it's going to be a very good season. We tried to make it more gritty, a little bit more dirty, I guess, and not in the image, but to make it as authentic as possible. We have some very surprising twists and turns in it as well." So let's break this down here. The fact that Brandstrom is claiming they are trying to make the tone darker does seem to indicate someone on the production might care about Tolkien's work, especially in the Second Age. Tolkien made it abundantly clear that the Second Age, which the show is set, is quite dark. In his letter 131 to Milton Waldman, he said the next cycle deals or would deal with the Second Age, but it on Earth, a dark age, and not very much of its history is or need be told. In the great battles against the first enemy, the lands were broken and ruined, and the west of Middle Earth became desolate. We learned that the exiled elves were, if not commanded, at least sternly counseled to return into the west and there be at peace. They were not to dwell permanently in Valinor again, but in the lonely isles of Erisea, within sight of the Blessed Realm. He then shared in the same letter, all through the twilight of the Second Age, the shadow is growing in the east of Middle Earth, spreading its sway more and more over men who multiply as the elves begin to fade. So I think it's very clear he's talking about how it's pretty dark. I mean, you have the shadow is growing. It's not looking good. You also have this letter 227 to Mrs. E.C. Austin Driver, where Tolkien wrote, "But there are, I fear, no hobbits in the Silmarillion or History of the Three Jewels, little fun or earthiness, but mostly grief and disaster." He added, "Those critics who scoffed at the Lord," he's referring to obviously the Lord of the Rings, "because all the good boys came home safe and everyone was happy ever after," quite untrue, Boromir being the obvious example there, "ought to be satisfied. They will not. They will not be, of course, even if they deign to notice the book." So clearly, he talks about how it is a pretty grim time during the Second Age. It is mostly grief and disaster, and he described it as a dark age. So the idea that they're going darker does seem to be like someone might be getting it over there. But we've seen comments like this before. Yes, we have. Showrunner J.D. Payne told San Diego Comic-Con attendees in July 2022, "So one, always back to Tolkien, and two, when Tolkien was silent, we tried to invent as Tolkienian a way as possible." His fellow showrunner Patrick McKay added, "Go back to the book, go back to the book, go back to the book." So they said that they were going to do these things, right? Well, we watched the first season. None of it happened. It had hobbits in the Second Age, which we just read didn't exist. It showed the creation of Mordor, which we know had already been created during the First Age. It made a mockery of Galadriel's character. We saw a wizard, which they didn't arrive in Middle Earth until the Third Age. And those are just a few of the absolutely atrocious decisions that they made when they kept saying they were going back to the book, back to the book, back to the book. They didn't go back to the book. They completely changed it. So while Brandstrom claims they are adjusting the show's tone, she also makes it abundantly clear that the second season will continue to depart from Tolkien's work and Legendarium. She does this when she says we have some very surprising twists and turns in it as well. There should not be any twists nor turns if the show stayed authentic to Tolkien's story. We would already kind of know what was happening. You don't need to have any twists or turns. You should just be doing a straight adaptation of what Tolkien wrote about for the Second Age. There wouldn't be any twists or turns. People should already know what happens. But she's saying there will be twists and turns, meaning they are going to be changing Tolkien's work again. But this shouldn't be a surprise. They did all of this in the first season. We just kind of went over some of it. They're clearly going to be doing it in the second season. And instead of 63% of people tuning out after watching the first episode, I think they're going to lose even more people. It's going to be an even bigger disaster. The ratings for this show are going to be absolutely atrocious, and I'm here for it because we don't need people watching absolute garbage that makes a mockery of J.R.R. Tolkien's work. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you guys make of this in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.